This just in, the Phoenix Suns have agreed to a deal with Luke Kennard. We have a lot of thoughts about it after this. What would you look at that? Is another PHNX Suns emergency podcast, and this time me and Steven are on time for it. We feel like every time some news happens, we are not around for it to happen. We joked about it earlier, and we finally caught the news. And you can make an argument that this is one of the biggest developments. According to ESPN's Shams Charania, free agent sharpshooter Luke Kennard has agreed to a 2-year, $13 million deal to join the Phoenix Suns, and there is a player option in that second season. We talked about him during our free agent frenzy earlier, and the frenzy has begun. Steven, Eric, how are we feeling about this reported deal that will bring Luke Kennard to the Valley?
I feel great, man. I feel really good about this. This is a great value contract. I said it on our show earlier today. Luke Kennard is not Grayson Allen, and that's perfectly fine because you're not paying him Grayson Allen money. What you needed from this free agent position is somebody who can contribute on offense, who can shoot the ball, and that's exactly what Luke Kennard can do. He's not just that. He's not as one-dimensional as that, but Steven, at the end of the day, what they brought Luke Kennard in to do on a very, very reasonable deal is go out there with Colin Gillespie and be the best three-point shooting tandem off the bench in the NBA. I mean, this is a guy that's got a very clear defined role, and the Suns are a lot better because he's here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the surface level, you pair your franchise leader in threes made in a singular season with statistically the second best three-point shooter in NBA history. Seems pretty good. I will hope that appeases the Suns' neat shooting faction of discourse on social media. But yeah, Luke Kennard, I think a smart basketball player past just the three-point shooting. I think the quick decisions we talked about earlier today is something that's really going to help them play faster, particularly in the half court. And naturally, when you have a shooter like that around, that opens up more opportunity for players like Colin Gillespie and also Iguodala to work in organic 2-versus-2 situations, which proved to be the best, most effective and efficient tandem on the team this past season.
You know, one of the things I had to shout out everybody who is here in the chat hanging out with us, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback about this signing. That's how you know that the team has done something right. We talk about Luke Kennard. This alignment, if there was a bell to ring, I would definitely ding it right now. You talk about shooting ability. How is 47.8% from beyond the arc this past season for Luke Kennard? It's a pretty high number. He spent the majority of last season with the Hawks and then was dealt to the Lakers and played in the postseason. We talked a little bit about the ups and downs that he had in this postseason, but he started on a very high, 5 for 5 from deep, had 27 points in that game one against the Houston Rockets. And the thing that stands out, and we talked about it a little bit with Luke Kennard, during that time with the Lakers, he only took 3 threes a game and 3.2 threes per game with the Hawks. I would expect that volume to go up. And the thing that I think about after this with what he brings to the table with shooting and a little dash of playmaking, which I'm sure we will discuss at one point. But the big thing is, where does he fit in with everything? We know what the starting lineup kind of looks like, but I'm curious at how you guys are envisioning him in a rotation. I know we've just found out he's a part of the roster. We've known this for like about a half an hour, but when you think about lineups and guys he's playing next to and the depth and different opportunities that and options he gives Jordan out, where does your head go with that?
I think he's an everyday player. This is a guy that if he's available, I don't see many games where he's going to be sitting on the bench. I know Steven's addressed the Suns don't have shooting crowd, and I wouldn't say I was fully in that camp, but I certainly worried about trading away your two of your 3 best three-point shooters for a guy who is a 33-ish% shooter from 3, better at catch and shoot, but still isn't going to light the world on fire, and Miles Bridges. So he's somebody that, along with Colin Gillespie, maybe the minutes will fluctuate depending on what they need defensively, maybe who's got it going that night between him and Colin. If somebody's injured in the starting lineup, I think Colin is the guy who's still first in that pecking order, and the salaries will definitely show that. But he absolutely is going to be an 82-game player for this team. I just need him, like you said, Gil, to up those three-pointers. And if he goes from, let's say, like 4 attempts per game at like 45, 46% to 8 attempts per game at 41, 40, 39%, to me, Steven, that's an infinitely more valuable player. And that's somebody that if he's coming off the bench with that type of mindset every single night, he's also somebody that you can look at in the playoffs and say, you go 8, 9, 10 deep, Luke Kennard's got to be one of those guys.
Yeah, I think I'll speak about it inversely. I think a lot of people might say, okay, well, what about the defensive side? Yes, we know Luke Kennard is going to get hunted. But guess what? So does Steph Curry. So it's not a matter of what your level of talent or capabilities are. It's just teams are going to naturally look for advantages. So regardless of whether they sign him or they sign Colin Sexton or they brought in someone else, anybody is going to get hunted, especially once you start getting towards the playoff stages or you get to the last 5 minutes of regular season games. It's less about that part because that's not going to go anywhere, and it's more about how well you can control that. We saw the Suns last season with Colin Gillespie, for example. Anytime Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, other primary ball handlers hunted guys like Gillespie out, the Suns were solid in their defensive shell, trusted those guys to just contain the ball and then allow for their help to do things to shrink the floor and things like that off of said players. Eric, you've talked about how well they defended primary ball handlers of that ilk last season. It's because that process is tried and tested. Now, those guys have to do a better job of kind of getting up solid contests. He's capable of that, but I think the process and the shell and the work that the Suns have done to let those guys know they're not on the island will help him be a little bit more successful than other situations have shown to be for him on that front. But to the offensive side, I think the margins. It's all about those margins. You think about, okay, yes, he's a shooter, but you think about the other things that the Suns did well around Devin Booker. The movement around primary actions. Luke Kennard, good going left, good going right, good playing off the pump fakes, not necessarily to the extent of a Royce O'Neal, but nearly as effective just because of how much of his shooting prowess plays into the decision-making of guys. So he does all of those little things as like a hybrid of what Royce brought, as well as a hybrid of some of the things that Grayson Allen brought in terms of those kind of shooter dynamics. And he's going to be a solid piece for him.
If Luke Kennard could not get hunted on defense, he wouldn't be signing a 2-year, $13 million deal. He'd be making probably like $40 million per year. If he was that offensive talent and wasn't hunted on defense, we'd be talking about a completely different player the Suns wouldn't even been in the market for. So at his value, if he's hunted on defense, but he's coming off of the bench with, I would say, almost all of the Suns' best defenders minus Dillon Brooks, but I think Oso's their best defensive center. I know he's not as big as Mark, but switchability on defense and the athleticism, even the rim protection with Oso is incredible. You've got Dunn, you've got Highsmith, you've got Goody, you've got Rasheer, you've got Kaman. So you're bringing in this uber athletic, uber defensive backup lineup with either one of or both of Colin Gillespie and Luke Kennard as these offensive outlets. And if Ryan, Rasheer, we know Oso won't be able to shoot, that's going to make these defensive lineups even harder to guard. You got a lot of plus athletes and then 2 really solid playmakers and shooters in the backcourt, Gil. So I like how this is shaping up. I like how this looks. The value on the money is great. And if Kennard ends up being a guy that plays so well this season, you can look at some of your other guards as possibly expendable. The Suns might be able to address a need at the trade deadline via trade because they have another option for a guard off the bench that can initiate and shoot.
That's the big thing that I think is really important. You talk about the player option on year 2 for this. So in a lot of ways, it's a little bit of a prove it deal for Luke Kennard. And that kind of gets into the nitty gritty, the Luke Kennard file, so to speak, because we talked about Kenny or Kenny not get hunted on defense. And it's happened. We even saw Jalen Green, one of the nicest ISOs he had against Atlanta this year was against his now teammate Luke Kennard. But it's a little bit harder to hunt somebody because Luke Kennard is listed at 6'5", 205. And when I watch him play, he looks a little bit taller than 6'5" out there. I would have guessed he was 6'6" at least. But he just turned 30 years old. So we talk about this team. He is now the second oldest guy on the team behind Dillon Brooks and then Devin Booker. And he's a guy who is entering year 10 in the NBA, drafted by Detroit, was a former lottery pick, spent time with the Clippers, spent time with the Grizzlies, where he played with Dillon Brooks and Jordan Goodwin during his time there, and spent this past season with the Hawks and Lakers. So that's really important to acknowledge as far as the Luke Kennard, everything that comes with him and where he is at this stage of his career, has a lot of good years ahead of him. 30, we always talk about it, Eric. Life begins at 30. You'll soon learn as far as that goes, and that's where Luke Kennard is, having just turned 30 years old. And really, I think he looks at this opportunity as a new life in the NBA. Last year, he showed some flashes with the Lakers. We mentioned what he did in the playoffs. You and I talked about it earlier today. He had a triple-double this past year, which a lot of people don't know much about, and I'm excited to look at the film of that. But that suggests that there are some playmaking chops there, at least making the right read, making the right pass when it presents itself. So there's a lot to be excited about Luke Kennard, and we talk about the guard depth that this team has. Now there are a lot of different guys who do different things. You have Khan, who can be that sharpshooter and initiate a little bit in a smaller frame. You can have Luke as a sharpshooter and an initiator in a little bit of a bigger frame, and the initiation in spots. I'm not saying he's going to be a guy who's running the offense. You're not running it through him, but he's shown the capability of doing so. The big one, as we talked about already, the volume of three-pointers. I believe his career high in three-point attempts is 6.1, and that was over a small period of time, a season where he only played 39 games with the Grizzlies. He also averaged like 6 the year that he played for the Grizzlies and the Clippers and got traded. So that's something that I'm curious to see. Can he get that back up to 6 and 7? How does he fit in this system with Jordan Knott? Because we know the priority, and I think that it's going to be, hey, look, if you're open, you can see the rim, let it fly. So I'm excited to see about that more than anything else. But for those of those you are a little more unfamiliar with the nitty gritty of Luke Kennard and his player file, he is a guy who is in year 10, brings some size with that position at two guard and can do a little bit here and there more than just shooting.
I think the other thing he can do a little bit more than just shoot it part. We talked a lot about, and I kind of emphasized the value Royce O'Neal provides, and a lot of that coming from just simply being able to inbound the basketball. With Luke Kennard, you get a lot of those very same qualities. You get someone that makes just smart decisions, knows how to get the ball where it needs to be, even in a pinch, on a playoff situation, in the clutch. He can do those things. What I'm also interested with that is because you can weaponize who is inbounding the basketball, the stuff that Jordan Knott and company can draw up for him or use him as a decoy from sideline or baseline out of bounds situations, using obviously his passing and then the prowess as a shooter off of movement from there. It's going to be some fun that they can get into with that. I think you will see him strike a similar accord to Royce O'Neal as far as that dynamic goes, but being able to do a little bit more just because he's more mobile.
Well, and that's the thing about Kennard is that he is not a singular type of three-point shooter. Some guys are just catch and shoot. Some guys are good off of movement. Some guys love taking the off the dribble self-creation threes, but then they are not great at catch and shoot. Kennard can do all of it. He's an extremely smart basketball player. He knows how to attack advantages. He's not afraid to dribble the ball. He's not afraid to pass it either. With all the attention he was getting in the Lakers postseason, still had a positive assist to turnover ratio. And when you're the second primary ball handler next to LeBron James and defenses know that, which I know is a crazy thing to say, but that's what was happening in LA. I still think that that's good. He's not the best passer in the world, but he's a positive passer, which the Suns certainly need more of those. And I've got a pop quiz for you guys, and maybe you'll be able to tell the answer based off the question. But if I asked you this past postseason, did Luke Kennard take more three-pointers in the game per game or two-pointers per game? What would you say?
Sounds like it's more two-pointers per game.
He took
shout out to Rockets defense. Yep.
Took 4.2 two-pointers per game and shot 50% from two, shot 3.8 three-pointers per game and shot 47%. That is hyper efficient, hyperactive, and very smart. He's not a one-trick pony, even though I think to best utilize him on a high-level team, you want him to slide a little bit into that role mainly. But he's shown the ability to hit the midi, to dribble, to maybe, I don't say drive to the hoop, but at least get inside the three-point line and be an effective scorer and hit free throws, Gil. He is a three-point specialist. That is what he should be mainly doing, but to have the option to do something else is always a good counter.
Definitely. When I think about that, as far as not being one-dimensional, and also for those of you who are unfamiliar, he's a lefty too. So when you see him out there, that impacts the way that you're able to navigate and maneuver around the court because there aren't that many lefties out there, and that's actually a big part of his identity on the floor. But yeah, it's not somebody who, and I've seen this firsthand as a fan of when he was in college at Duke. he was able to do a lot. I know I had to say it. I can't even dance around at this time, but seeing the way he operates, and granted that was 10 plus years ago at this point, but he showed a lot of flashes. This is a guy who's filled it up at every level that he's played at, a guy who set scoring records in the state of Ohio, which, if you didn't know, his former Lakers teammate LeBron James also played high school basketball in Ohio. He broke a lot of those scoring records because he's more than just three-point shooter. Guys who just shoot the ball from three don't score at that rate. And he's had some big nights and big performances in the NBA. And one thing I was thinking about it, we watched this in the office, would have never thought that he'd be wearing purple and orange this year. But I don't know if you remember when the Lakers were on that win streak and it was looking very dire and they were in Orlando. They found Luke Kennard on that inbound pass, and he made the three-pointer as time expired in Orlando to give the Lakers that game winner. So as short-lived as his time was in L.A., he delivered a lot of moments. He's a guy you can count on in those spots. Oh, we're down 5. We need a 3 here. We can run somebody off a screen, come off the screens. Everybody needs to have a guy like that on their roster. And after the trade, we didn't know who that guy was going to be for the Suns. So this answers a big role because we know how important shooting is in the NBA. And we talked about it earlier. There are 16 three-point attempts that need to be replaced, or at least a portion of those 16 attempts. He's not going to take all 16, but the situational three-point shooting is something that everybody needs to have. And in Luke Kennard, the Suns have that.
I'll go ahead and say real quick, Eric, his career high in a season is 6.5, and he did that in his 3rd season. I think you mentioned that earlier, Gil. I'll just go ahead and say he's breaking that this season.
Good.
Jordan Knox going to give him the ultra green light, but I think past Jordan not giving him the ultra green light, I think that the foundational layer of the Suns offense of trusting the pass, and that starting with Devin Booker to the chagrin of many fans begging for him to take more shots. He set that tone last season by trusting the pass. Next thing you know, you get to that game against Oklahoma City just after the new year. The ball movement puts them in so many closeout situations that Jordan Goodwin's able to walk his way into knocking down a career high of threes. That's something that I think Luke Kennard is going to greatly benefit from. The principles established, Devin Booker's buy-in to those principles and the way he plays in terms of being a selfless superstar. I think he's going to go and obliterate what was his his season high in threes on average per game at 6.5.
And if he does that and he shoots around 40% from 3, then this is an even better signing. And I don't want to make it out to seem like Luke Kennard is going to be the savior for the Suns or he's going to play like a $25 million per year player, because he likely won't. But we can put box score watching aside. We can put three-pointers attempted. We could put percentages. We can go aside. If you did not watch the Lakers' first round series against the Rockets, and you are a Phoenix Suns fan, I would highly recommend go and watch at least just Luke Kennard highlights from that series, because when I'm talking high percentage from 3, high percentage from 2, you might think to yourself, oh, well, it's Luke Kennard, so he's wide open or he's off of movement, but, you know, the very high quality looks. No. He's taking off the dribble, step back, run back to the three-point line threes. He's taking off the dribble, attack off the mini, bump somebody with your shoulder, fade away 2-pointers, swish. Against the Rockets, who have the one redeemable thing they had in the playoffs was their defense. So you have somebody who will likely not hit those highs for you. That's probably the best basketball he's ever played in his career. If every player the Suns signed played the best basketball they've ever played in their career, they'd be the best team ever. But that's not usually how it works. But to know that that's in there somewhere and he's coming directly off of that, Gil, that could be this huge confidence booster. And I'd have to imagine that he wants to be in Phoenix, because I'm sure he could have gotten a slightly higher contract elsewhere, Gil, and he probably could have waited to see where this free agent market laid out with LeBron James holding everything up. But instead, he's one of the first free agents to sign with the Suns on a reasonable contract coming off of a career playoffs run. That feels like a great fit and a great buy-in for the system that Steven was mentioning, unlocking him attempting more threes.
And that's something we talked about earlier, Eric. We talked about players talk. And even though it was brief, I think it's like 25 games he played next to Dillon Brooks and maybe like 10 or 15 he played next to Jordan Goodwin. But you bet if the team is involved with your former teammate, they're asking, hey, how do you like Phoenix? What do you like about Phoenix? And they're saying, hey, this is good. This is good. You should come here because we need this and that. Same goes for Grayson Allen. They were teammates in college. And this is a guy who I'm sure he asked, even though Grayson was traded, it wasn't an unceremonious exit as far as that goes. And a quick aside, I don't know if my sarcasm meter is broken, but if you want to know how good of a signing this is, I just saw Boom in the chat. Ask somebody else why they're being so negative. So if you were curious about how good of a signing the Suns have made this right here with Luke Kennard, that's where we are right now. It's exciting. Like we said, it wasn't something that broke the bank. It wasn't anything that they felt like they had to overextend themselves to do. And it answers a very specific place of need with the Suns. And this is a cerebral player. This is a player who, as much as I rag on it and won't say the name, guys who come from that program are typically cerebral basketball players and play a certain style of basketball. And there's a reason why he's been in the NBA going for a decade as far as that goes. So I'm really excited about that. You bring another veteran in. He's older, but he's not old. So he fits the timeline, and it makes sense for trying to improve upon what we saw last year, trying to win games. And you should feel good about this signing, given everything that's going on. And I just like to see that this front office is very active, and they're very active in addressing needs as well.
I got a question for you guys.
No.
Cool. So you can follow the show at PHNX_Suns. We'll be back live tomorrow at 3, which we will be back live tomorrow at 3. What's the best lineup for Luke Kennard? Because the Suns have shifted. They've shifted their roster a ton. We have this members only chat from Kevin, who's been a member for 7 months, who says Amir Coffey, Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, and Nakoa Pete, Miles Bridges, Luke Kennard, while retaining your guys for value deals. Another W off season. So the Suns have retained a ton of players. They've moved a couple of players. I think they look like a rather significantly different team going into this next year while preaching some continuity. What's the best lineup with Luke Kennard? What are you looking forward to the most?
What comes to mind, Steven? I'm still formulating it.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me is you having willing screeners out there for him. Knowing that if you're screening for someone who has the shooting prowess and the gravity and the movement and the speed at which he can move off the ball, knowing that if you lay a solid screen, you're either getting a positive result or you're going to be able to slip to the basket in some capacity and be able to score, create another opportunity or advantage from there. So giving him at least one willing screener out there with him, I think him and Oso are going to naturally kind of combine and make for yet another fun tandem. Luke Kennard maybe doesn't move as fast or isn't as nimble or as swift as Colin Gillespie, but in a lot of those handback and chase actions that Colin Gillespie and Oso Ighodaro enjoyed so much success with last season, Luke Kennard can play in those same situations. He's capable of throwing an occasional lob and being able to put it at a spot that, because of his shooting prowess, allows for someone else to be able to cut to the basket and then finish a dunk or a layup from there. And I think that can kind of turn into an offense in and of itself because of that gravity. So I'll start with him being on the court with Oso. I'll throw Jalen Green, Miles Bridges. So you got Luke Kennard, Jalen Green, Miles Bridges, Oso Ighodaro, and who could this fifth be? Because there's a couple of different ways you could go with that fifth guy. Let's throw Devin Booker out there. Let's have some fun. So throw Book out there. Give him another shooter, another playmaker, another willing screener, all of that fun stuff.
Can I go, Gil? Can I go?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes, you may.
The right answer at center position's Oso. It's always going to be Oso. We saw Oso and Collins chemistry. I think Oso and Kennard, maybe Oso thinks they're the same guy when they're out there, and it's just kind of like it's just easy. So we got to start with Oso for sure. I also would like some high octane defensive playmaking around Luke Kennard. I'm going to go with Rasheer Fleming at the 4. I think Rasheer takes a good leap offensively, is able to still shoot the 3 at the clip that we saw post All-Star break for the Suns this last season. Him and Oso defensively behind Kennard is going to be a really good way, especially if we're in a, let's say, not a must-win scenario, but an important game, an NBA Cup game early in the season, and you just need a good bench lineup. I'm going to go with those two. Give me Devin Booker, obviously navigating things, being the true point guard, Kennard making plays off of him. And then at my small forward position, give me Dillon Brooks. I think the defensive edge of Dillon Brooks, while also being able to get some isolation scoring. Kennard and Book are pretty good passers, especially together. It's a better passing tandem in the backcourt than Jalen Green and Devin Booker, plus the playmaking of Oso. So that's the lineup I like, but I'm also fascinated as with him and Goody on the court together, because those are like almost two polar opposite guys. And by the look of your face, Gil, that might be where you were going.
Yeah, Goody was one I was going to include in mine. I kind of like maybe like a blue collar lineup, and then he kind of fits in with that and sees how blue can this collar get when he's next to those guys. So Oso is almost like the all-time quarterback. Oso is going to be in this lineup. So we got Oso. I got Goody as far as that goes as well. Rasheer, I think if the shooting can develop with that, and I'm going to continue to just like, this might sound out of left field, but I'm loving watching Rasheer and Ryan on the court defensively. I think that's just something with, you got a little bit of the running as far as that goes as well, and see how he can cut, how he can play off of some of those smart plays that are being made by Luke. And for a fifth guy, you could take your pick. I mean, do you want Book in there to kind of keep order kind of in play? I think that's kind of what I like as far as that goes. So you have 4 reserves and your guy on the court together. So that's one. And as we know with Jordan Knott, we're going to see all of these lineups probably. We might see like 4 guards, 4 shooter, like that. You know, all of these things are on the table. Like we might see, you know, some Colin and Luke. All of those things are on the table. I'm excited to see kind of what these start to formulate as.
So the reason why I asked that question is because of the depth of the Suns and the variety of lineups. Steven, do you see a world where they can consistently trot out Colin and Luke together on the court?
I think you can. We saw a lot of Colin and Grayson, especially when the starting lineup was intact the way that they desired for it to be. So yeah, I can see them getting into some very similar lineups on that front. But I think where we saw Grayson excel playing in 2-man with Devin Booker, particularly as the screener, I think we can see Luke Kennard kind of relishing those exact same situations. He's a very smart player in terms of knowing what screening angles to use to free a guy, but also to kind of tug at whatever coverage they might be in, and then being able to naturally pop and get wide open 3-point opportunities from that. So I think that's another kind of way that Luke is going to immediately find ways into success. And then take it past the 2 players. We talked a lot about Spain pick and roll and a lot of the cutting and all of that stuff that Grayson Allen did last season as well. Insert Luke Kennard into those exact same actions, and you'll get a similar result, if not maybe slightly better.
Is Luke Kennard the second best passer on the Suns?
I can't go that far. He
Is
can
he the
pass,
3rd or the 4th?
He can pass in respect to his skill set, but in terms of the different contexts of plays that he's making plays in, I can't say he's the second best passer. He is higher up.
Book's 1, also 2.
Yes, Book 1, also 2. I guess 3 and 4 is up for debate. I got Miles Bridges at number 3.
And then Kennard?
Mm-hmm.
So you add maybe your best 3-point shooter, him and Colin, top 5 playmaker, which again, I don't think that's the best thing in the world. I think it proves
is he a better passer than Colin? Since we having a
conversation. I would put Colin for Miles.
I can comfortably say that. Yeah, I would say 3 and 4 is up for grabs between Colin and Miles. Whoever you want to pick, they're cool. And then Luke is 5th.
That's fair. That's not bad. That's not bad. You get your. And speaking of that, I want to give a shout out to our people at All NBA. I don't know if you guys saw the graphic that they just tagged us in, but the tweet says that there have always been questions about the volume, but among the 100 players who have attempted the most catch and shoot threes since Luke Kennard entered the league, no one has been more accurate. So that is a smaller volume, but a 10-year sample size. And Luke Kennard, 46.52% on those catch and shoot threes since he entered the league 10 years ago, nearly. And the names he's up there with, he's ahead of Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, Norman Powell, Steph Curry, CJ McCollum, Michael Porter Jr., Buddy Hield, Grayson Allen, and Danny Green round out that list. That's not insignificant, guys. Like the fact that he's atop the list of all of those names, and even looking at the volume, it's 7 3-point attempts per one. So like if you take a look at the graphic yourselves, but it's pretty cool to see that the Suns pick that guy up. And as we talked about, if you could even just get that to tick up to 5 attempts per game, which we think he's going to set a career high in attempts per game. And I don't know if there's a regression at some point, but he's a shooter. So keep shooting the rock, man.
I can't wait to watch him play. I mean, again, this is a 2-year, $13 million signing. This is a bench shooting guard. This is somebody that there will be matchups where maybe he's not able to play defensively. It might be smarter to go with Goody and Colin, because I do think Colin is a better defender than Luke, even though he's shorter. He just competes a little bit more at that end, has a little bit more grit. Colin's also a better rebounder than Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard does not rebound the ball, which, again, that's not his job. So there will be certain matchups and certain days where maybe Kennard gets 5 minutes, maybe gets a little bit under 10. And then there will be some games where he might have to play 20 plus, depending on if he's got it going and if maybe there's another guard out of the rotation. So I think that this is a really smart move for the Suns. I guess the question is, now that you're at 15 roster spots, is this it? Do we think they make a trade? Do they identify another free agent that comes next? I don't know if that's completely out of the question, but it kind of feels like this is the end of what's already been an extremely busy offseason for the Suns.
I was thinking the same thing. Go ahead, Stephen.
I don't think you can place a value on just simply knowing what someone's going to provide you on consistency. In a league where a lot of role players, even players with a clearly identified top tier skill, come with a certain level of variance within what's the impact of that top tier skill, to be able to add a puzzle piece, which is what Luke Kennard is. He's not a piece that's raising your floor or raising your ceiling. He's just a puzzle piece to help sustain. You can't really place a value on that, especially in the context in which the Suns were able to get the opportunity to bring him in by way of a domino effect from the Miles Bridges trade 2 for 1, the contracts involved, the money involved. You open up the opportunity for the mid-level exception, and this is what you ultimately are able to get because of that just a couple of days later. Like, this is just a piece that really fits for what it is they've needed, and you can go into every game knowing that, okay, for you bettors out there, not my cup of tea, but I bet you Luke Kennard is good for at least a three-pointer made to probably get you a little scratch on the back end of that every single game. And again, if we're talking about him upping the volume to extents of a career high rate on average and just in general on totals, that's something that can be a piece that kind of shifts some things for you in a positive way.
The thing I was thinking about with him is that it gives you versatility. And we talk so much, and we saw it this past year with the Suns and the way the roster was made up. Different nights call for different things, and you need different things on different nights. Doesn't mean you stray away from your team identity, but some nights you need to sway a little more to being the team that takes 35, 43. This team took 41 a game last year. Some games is going to be a little bit more of a game that you grind out, and you have to lean towards your size or your length or your athleticism. And I think that when you talk about, I guess, kind of like the overlap or the Venn diagram and where Luke Kennard fits in the middle of all of those things, he gives you the flexibility to do that. So that's what excites me more as far as that goes, because yes, he has brought in his skill, what he is known for, what he has always been known for is a shooting ability. But with him not being a small guy, having a little bit of size, yes, he can get picked on. He does get picked on defensively, but there are things that he can do just from being 6'5", 210. And you asked, are the Suns done? Our friend of the program, Keith Smith, who after this emergency pod, you can go and watch him and what he did when he joined us yesterday. He said, with Luke Kennard in the fold, the taxpayer MLE of $6.1 million, the Suns project to be about $4.9 million under their second apron hard cap. That should be enough flexibility for in-season moves. Suns roster is now at 15 players on standard deals. So that's important to note, because whether or not we see anything else this offseason, whether it's guys brought on two-way deals, which as we've learned with this team, that is not insignificant either, whether it's guys that are getting brought in on Exhibit 10s or just to be camp competition, the in-season move piece is very big for this team. We know that December 15th is a big date in the regular season because more guys become trade eligible. The same goes for the middle of January. And then, of course, there's the trade deadline when February rolls around. So it's not like the Suns have handcuffed themselves and done this move and given the deal to somebody that they're stuck. They cannot do anything. There are also non-guarantees as far as Jamari Bouye and Haywood Highsmith's contracts go, but we've talked already so much about how valued they are in this locker room. But my biggest takeaway to your question, Eric, is if they don't like the way things look, whether it's after camp, whether it's after preseason, whether it's 20 games to the season, the Suns are not tied down. Given the things that they're already working around, this signing doesn't add a different wrinkle for them to work around.
Yeah, you actually now position yourself after the offseason. And I say the offseason you've had, it's the first day of free agency, and it's pretty much
it's not even July yet, brother.
They've been doing so much this past week and a half, but I'm going to break down the roster into potential tradable assets, right? So let's say that this season goes okay for the Suns, but there's a player that comes up at the deadline that they really want. Or maybe things don't go as well as they'd like, and they're sellers, or they're looking to regain some assets, or maybe just somebody's not a fit, right? So let's start with the signing today. Luke Kennard on a 2-year MLE, taxpayer MLE, so $6.1-ish million per year. That, for a contender, is an incredibly tradable contract. We just saw a playoff team in the West who had home court trade for Luke Kennard at the deadline to add a little bit of offensive juice. So that's something that could be traded. Now, I'm not advocating for any of these players to be traded. I'm just stating facts. Colin Gillespie at a 4-year, $48 million deal under control with no options is an incredibly tradable contract. If Mark Williams plays 50 games before the All-Star break, his 3-year contract is definitely a tradable contract, considering he's only going to be making around $11 to $12 million per year. You have a guy in Jordan Goodwin, who is an incredible value on his contract, who, as a throw-in on a trade, because he doesn't make a high salary, is an incredible sweetener. You have a bunch of guys on rookie deals that are also really good sweeteners as well. Jalen Green, if he doesn't get extended, will be an expiring contract. Miles Bridges, if he doesn't get extended, will be an expiring contract. So you go down the list of players that other teams might identify as potential pieces to involve in a trade. The Phoenix Suns have done very good business this offseason to make these contracts very desirable. Now, they might not move any of them, Steven, but if they needed or wanted to, I see like 7 to 8 guys that other teams could identify as high-value trade pieces.
Yeah, they give themselves an escape route, if you will, and I think that's the challenge in being a good general manager. Understanding your situation, being smart about the contracts that you are doling out, being smart with the ones that you have under team control already, but also setting yourself up for success past the present. I think that's the hard part, where people that like to play GM in other capacities fail to kind of look at the full overarching goal of what the job is. To keep your books tight in the present, give yourself a chance to win, but also be maintained in the future, so that when that time comes, let's say a superstar opportunity comes, maybe you have more access to more picks. Now you have a chance to viably put your phone number into that conversation, and you see what you can get from that. There was a comment a little earlier from, I think it was B Will in the chat, where he mentioned too much talk about offense essentially, and that's why the team is not going to win. B Will, last season the Suns were 9th in defense and 5th in half-court defense. They were 16th in offense and 21st in half-court offense. One of those sides needed to be addressed to a certain extent with some new pieces, some new skill sets to complement what they had established already. The other side was already fine, and I feel like, dare I say, they got maybe even a half step better. They were 9th and 5th, respectively, in half-court in defense and in half-court defense. I don't think that side of the ball needed a ton more help.
And that's the thing, because you talk about that side of the ball too. We've said so much and talked about continuity and internal development. The guys that we're expecting to develop internally, a big part of that is their defense. So when you talk about a Rasheer Fleming, Kaman Malawach, Ryan Dunn, and quite frankly, hey, Koa Pete, if you want to get on the court as a rookie this year, bring it on the defensive end. So there is a lot to be excited about defensively with this team. And even we were talking through the lens of some of Luke Kennard's shortcomings on that end of the floor, the thing we immediately said after that is we could put guys around him that can cover for some of that. And it's not going to be as bad. Even when you look at what the Cavs did, right, in trading Darius Garland for James Harden, 2 guys who are not known for their defense. But the thing was, hey, you get a guy who's 4 inches taller just by virtue of being a larger player, a larger person. There are fewer things that you can take advantage of on that end of the floor. So until proven otherwise, I'm not going to be that concerned about defense just because of the proof of concept this past year. And the other point, we were talking about move making and what could be done in the flexibility. And you mentioned a lot of different potential trade chips and guys who could be moved elsewhere. One thing we've learned about the crazy deals that we've seen in this offseason trade-wise is that all it takes is one report or one disgruntled guy saying, look, I'm ready to go elsewhere. And if you are able to have the chips, have the pieces that you could put together in a trade package, and that is why, even though it's a swap that's not that favorable, getting that control back over the near picks, I think they've given themselves an opportunity to do that. And I mentioned those benchmark dates. Well, guess what else that includes? That means there's going to be a lot of evaluation. You can see who you envision to be untouchable in your core, who you think you're willing to do without, who you're comfortable with parting ways with to get somebody who fits better, somebody you want more in this system. So it's a healthy level of competition. I think this team loves playing with one another, and they would love to have the exact same group this time next year than they have right now. But we know that that's not how it works in this league. And if it's time and certain guys don't fit and there's a better fit out there, we know now that this front office is willing to make that happen. And I'm really, really excited to see how it all comes together, because there are a lot of pieces that could come together in intriguing ways.
And we know they're more than willing to trade a pick. We know they're more than – hey, how many first-round picks do we have available? Cool. Trade them all. Let's do it. And sometimes it'll work. Maybe sometimes it won't. Obviously, the jury is out. So, fellas, let's do something that nobody's ever done here in just the basketball space, in the sports podcasting space. Let's go ahead and grade this signing. What grade would you give Luke Kennard to the Suns for 2 years, $13 million?
I'll go first, and I will say B+, A-, right on that line. So I'm feeling very positive about it. I think I need a little more time to digest everything about it, but I have nothing but positive feelings right now. I don't want to be just a prisoner of the moment and go A+ or A, but it feels like a positive. We think about the value of the signing, the 2 years, $13 million, the player option on year 2, the addressing the need and the addressing size. It's not a small guy. I envision him working out here and playing here. So I got to go with an A-, B+ on this one.
Yeah, for me on my grading scale, the A will have to be something that's shifting things even further in the direction that you desire to go. Because I just feel like he's a puzzle piece. A puzzle piece can only have but so much impact on the initial grade being given. So I give it a solid B+. I think I love the contract that he was signed to. I like the team. I like the player option. I think it was a player option, right, on the back end on the second year. Mm-hmm. I like that option there as well. I also like that they were able to address a particular position or a particular skill set of need, and being able to bring someone in that can also do a little bit more than just what that particular task would be. So, yeah, bringing in someone, the best active shooter in the NBA right now in terms of 3-point percentage, and second only to Steve Kerr in league history. That's pretty good. And then you bring in all of the other things that he brings on the mental side of the game as well. I think he's a good fit for them.
I got to give it an A+ because Luke Kennard's in the chat right now.
Let's go, Luke? Cool hand, Luke. What's good? What's good? What's good?
No, but for real though, I'm going to give it an A. And you have to understand that when we grade these things, it's all on a scale. No moves are graded alike. Realistically, this is a minor move. You're paying $6 million per year for a backup guard who's going to give you some good minutes, could possibly play in the playoffs. I think that's a great move. This is a good value signing. You're not locking yourself down for a bunch of years. You're not paying an exorbitant amount of money who does have flaws on one end of the court. And for what this team wants to do, I see him fitting in really well. And for what it's worth, I'm giving it an A. So is 70% of the over 500 people who have voted in our chat right now, giving this an A. So 70% of 500, I'm not doing the math on that, but it's a lot. 23% say B. So 93% give it at least a B grade at over 500 votes in our chat.
That's like 350, bad. By the way.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I got you.
You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to.
We're a team. We're a team. Like, this is like you. There's a mismatch. Somebody blew by you. Your blow by rate. Work on it, Eric. But I'm back in help side to get a block there. So that's what teammates do. You know what I mean? So
fair enough.
I got you.
And then you just put me out to blast in front of everybody. Sure. Okay, so speaking of teammates, I think maybe the last thing we could talk about here, at Got Game OTR with a $5 super chat says, "Call me crazy, but I still see a world where LeBron James joins this roster. Can LeBron James be a teammate of Luke Kennard once again, but this time in Phoenix?"
Hey, you crazy, gang, but I like that kind. I like that crazy.
Yeah, it's fun to think about. One thing I said right before we got on here was that Luke Kennard did play for the King James Rising Stars in the AAU program, and then they just played last year together in Los Angeles. So maybe this is the first domino to just – he's like, man, y'all make a compelling case by getting one of my shooters. His son's right up the road. There are worse places for LeBron James to land. I would be absolutely stunned and shocked if it happened, but never say never.
Especially because at this point, what contract is LeBron signing to if he
two-way deal?
Which to that point, hey man, if it happens,
if he says I want to be here, furniture will be moved, and they might ask us to help move it, and we will be there.
Put it like this: I would love to talk to LeBron on a consistent basis. So sign me up for that as much as anybody else, but I just don't see it, especially with what money they have available at this present moment too.
My last thought: we do know how LeBron really prioritizes his podcast co-hosts. Last one was as coach. His current one is a senior advisor here in Phoenix and won 2 MVPs here. I'm just saying.
It's definitely something to keep in mind. I'm not going to call you crazy, my guy. I'm going to call you a dreamer. That's what I'm going to call you.
Yeah, there it is.
But definitely not crazy. And I also just want to make sure, because, there are people here who want the most important information, that per Shams Charania, Kennard's agents, Aaron Mintz and David Spann of CAA Sports committed to a new deal with Phoenix. So I know that everybody really cares who the agents are. That's why Shams tweets it every single time. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware which agency signed this, which agents worked on this, and just how hard and diligently they worked with the Phoenix Suns in order to get what is a spectacular deal for both sides done.
See, this agent talk is like music fans talking about record sales and all of this on the timeline. It's like, are y'all A&Rs or y'all fans? Like, I can't tell the difference nowadays. But relevant nonetheless, Eric. Correct.
So he's not a clutch guy, though.
He's not a clutch guy, but Aaron Mintz, he's a cool guy. He's fresh.
End the show, dude. End the show.
I was just saying that's important stuff.
No comment.
Hey, I just know that this charm and these puns don't matter if we're in the same room or not. You're going to get them. I just want to let y'all know.
He's rubbing his hand together like he's Birdman. What are we doing here?
That's crazy.
Some of my best work, and I love that the second it takes for it to hit. That's the best part about it.
Yeah, that internet lag where you're just like,
huh.
That was like the lag when I got my ass kicked in front of our entire company in the 2K championship.
That was
you know what though? Accountability. Over 600 of you guys in here reacting to the news with us that Luke Kennard is set to become a Phoenix Sun. We appreciate each and every one of you in here. And while you're in here, make sure to subscribe and like if you have not already. We are here all off season with the Phoenix Suns. We don't know how much more of an off season they're going to be, but if what we've seen in the last 10 days, because the first thing happened last Saturday and it is Tuesday now, and this is, I count 6 significant moves that the team has made. They said what all season, because they are making it happen and making things happen. And I think that is the one of the final thoughts and points I want to put out there as we wind down is this is a team, and they said it. They aren't just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. And when we were at the exit interviews that Brian Gregory and Matt Ishbia had, they said that what we saw from this team is that it's not good enough. They said this team is not good enough. And everybody in the chat was saying this team got swept by who we thought was going to be the eventual champion. We saw the gold standard of where the Suns want and need to be if they want to consider themselves someone or somebody that's to be taken serious in the NBA and in the Western Conference. And what have they done? They have tried to address needs. They have tried to improve, given the circumstance that they have to work around, dead money and what have you. And they have done things that everybody can get behind. And if that doesn't inspire your confidence as far as what they've done for the product on the court and the way they've improved this team, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, couldn't say it better, Gil. I think when you look at some of the flaws, I think a lot of people emphasize the defensive rebounding part. I think you get better when you ask someone that has the capability on the defensive glass, and also the proof of concept in each of the last 3 or 4 seasons of his career that Miles Bridges has in terms of defensive rebound rate relative to what his position is. I think I mentioned it earlier. 2 of the last 3 years, he's been 85th percentile or better on the defensive boards in particular, and how that parlays into the Suns wanting to play better with the starting unit and how he can naturally just kind of feed that part of it. Defensive rebounding was one piece. Rim pressure was another piece. You naturally answer that with Miles Bridges as well, with the ways that he operates out of the post, as well as just being able to drive and get downhill, especially in transition. And then to the three-point shooting part, you lose some of that with obviously Royce and Grayson being gone, but you are able to recoup a little bit with the second best three-point shooter in history and the best active shooter in the NBA right now in terms of career three-point percentage. So job well done. I saw somebody earlier in the chat mention that they can give a more complete grade for the Miles Bridges deal, seeing the deal that came after that deal, and they bumped their B up to an A. And I think that's a fair type of assessment of the deal. You essentially get Kennard and Bridges in place of O'Neal and Allen. If you just closed your eyes, looked at it as a template for a deal, and you said, would you do that? And do you think the Suns got better from that? I think most of us would probably say yes. And I think that's where they're sitting right now.
I 100% agree. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people say I'm very low on the Miles Bridges trade. They're off the court reasons, yes. On the court reasons, I'm not. And I gave it a B+. And part of the reason was that it gave you maneuverability to go and do something like this. And I don't think that this front office would make a move like that if they didn't have something like this lined up. And we talked about it in our free agency show earlier today, which, by the way, evergreen content, folks. Go watch it. It's 2 hours of us just sitting there booing Shams Charania for not giving us any news and then tweeting the most random BS of all time and talking about over-under on DeAndre Jordan scoring 10 points in a game this year. So we had a lot
And
of
did you know that the NBA Cup Championships being played at Butler University this year? Just saying.
I was aware. I was definitely aware of that. And I'm also aware that DeAndre Jordan is returning for his 19th NBA season. So again, like we had a ton of fun, but we were talking about how everything kind of felt like the Suns had a plan, right? None of this felt like they're flying by the seat of their pants. Like, oh, like, whatever happens. If Luke Kennard comes up, if Colin Sexton comes up, then who cares? They definitely made the Miles Bridges trade knowing that something else was at least going to line up, whether it was Kennard specifically. I'm sure they had a good idea. I don't think they started negotiating at 3:00 Arizona time today. So that is a reason why I liked the move. So I liked the move because it gave you some more flexibility. I didn't like giving up that first round pick in 2033 unprotected, but Miles Bridges theoretically solved some of your issues. You gave up one of your strengths to get that. You now have a secondary signing on a individually much better deal than either Royce O'Neal or Grayson Allen. This guy's going to be making $4 million less than Royce O'Neal this year. So you have all of that lined up now after this move. It makes that move make more sense to maybe some of the doubters. And again, I think it has been business-wise, transactionally, basketball-wise, a very successful offseason for the Phoenix Suns. And if you're just looking at on the court, Suns fans should be excited to watch what this team can do next year.
They're not running it back. And I think as could talk ourselves into the idea of them running it back, but now we don't have to do that anymore. If nothing else, and I don't think it's not going to work, but they are doing something different with a similar identity and trying to make some tweaks and changes in some of the margins that could make all the difference as we've learned this past year. And the big one is health, and that's something that Luke Kennard played 78 games last year with two different teams. We have no idea how to project that for anybody on the roster. I think we can knock on wood and say that after everything that there was last year, fingers crossed, knock on wood, touch metal, whatever it is, it can't get much worse. So let's hope that that's not the case, but it gives you something to be excited about. And I appreciate the excitement that we've seen from everybody who's been chatting. For the most part, it seems like people just wanted to see something a tad different, a touch different, to see if this team can measure up differently against the teams that they had trouble with and the teams that they did not have trouble with next year. And the biggest thing that I will kind of say is my final thought is everything has made sense. And you're not standing pat and saying, oh, well, let's just count on being healthier next year. You're seeing the Clippers are focusing on the future. The Timberwolves are trying to change their identity. And all these teams, the Trailblazers, have changed their identity. And all these teams in the Western Conference that you're going to be in contention with, the Jazz are another team. It's going to be a bloodbath in the Western Conference this upcoming year. And you can feel confident in knowing, okay, we didn't just sit here and sit on our hands and say, we're going to be healthy next year. Let's bring some different guys in the margins. Let's give some different looks. Let's count on the guys on our roster getting better. And let's check the ball and see what happens.
One name we haven't heard mentioned this entire podcast is Mr. Matt Ishbia. I think representation matters. The Suns are hosting the NBA All-Star Game and All-Star Weekend in 2027. They will be looking to have at least one person represented in the All-Star game itself and the three-point contest. Luke Kennard, Colin Gillespie. Who's going to go get that? I'm going to be very curious to see the way those kind of numbers dole out for those two over the course of the season. I feel like there's a solid chance that if Gillespie sustains and Luke continues to do what he does on a higher volume, they'll probably have somebody represented in there. I can't remember how many times Luke has participated, but he's been there a few times. And I can't imagine that was something that they naturally had, like, oh, yeah, we need someone to be in that. But I think it's something that domino effect wise is something else that they can kind of add to what it is they're looking forward to this upcoming season.
Another name we haven't mentioned a ton, we've talked about him just briefly talking about the system, is that Jordan Ott now I think has his roster for next season. And there are lots of new ways for him to formulate, working with Jalen Green and Devin Booker and Dylan Brooks, hopefully a full season of all three of those guys relatively. You know, everybody gets injured every once in a while, but hopefully nothing major like we saw last season. But we're not waiting for Mark Williams and restricted free agency to eventually get signed and you know, or come back on the qualifying offer sometime in like September. Like we saw restricted free agency drag out last year. Colin Gillespie and Jordan Goodwin have been back in the building already for even longer than Mark Williams. You did make a trade, but you made that trade early and you did it before free agency so you can bring in somebody else on the first day of free agency. Every single day that this coaching staff gets to better plan out for these players, I'm more confident in the Suns being better. The ultimate wild card in the NBA is having a great coaching staff. And if there's one thing we learned last year is that despite clear flaws that this roster had, they have a great coaching staff. So whatever flaws these new players might bring, I'm pretty confident that Jordan Ott and company will find ways to help mask those deficiencies and focus on the strengths because they did it in so many different ways last season. I can't imagine that was a one-off instance from a coaching staff, and Jordan Ott should get better. I don't know if you know this. He was a rookie head coach last year. So sophomore season, he should be better. I'm just saying, I know that we're doing a breaking news podcast. I don't want to break two pieces of news in one show.
That's crazy.
He was a rookie head coach.
That's crays. And it's funny to talk about that, considering the level of preparation that he puts into it. And you said it already, but even regardless of when they started these negotiations and had it in mind, Luke Kennard is somebody that we all knew was going to be a free agent, and people thought about, okay, well, what could he look like? And I'm sure they did this for 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 other free agents, guys who are available, and they're probably still doing that, just doing your due diligence. But if you don't think that now this 15-man roster is set, Jordan Ott is going to dedicate every minute that he can to, okay, how about this lineup? Let's start with this one. What about this lineup? What about this one? The exercise that we just did, that's probably going on in his mind right now. It's just firing. Like the way that we've seen him navigate and the way that we've seen him strategize for games, the way that we've heard him talk the game, that's just how his brain works, right? So that's going to be an exciting thing to think about, the fact that he has, barring any minor changes that could definitely happen, but tomorrow is July 1st. We won't see this team actually take the floor for a basketball game for another 3 months. So stick with us. We'll get you covered for those next 90 days. But you know that Jordan Ott is going to spend so many hours over that 90-day period figuring out so many things that the plan when this team convenes for training camp is going to be in place and very exciting. And the big thing is just making sure everybody is available at your disposal, and they'll be good.
Summer League next Friday. Let's get it, man. This is going to be fun because on top of all of this, you got a whole crop of young guys. If one of them pops, we're talking about a team that could compete for home court in the Western Conference. If one of Rashir or Kaman or Koa or Ryan or Oso just take a leap next year, trajectory of this team looks even different than what it looks like right now.
Absolutely. That's what we talked about in our Wrote a Piece for the diehards. You can check it out over at gophnx.com right now. But what I said, we talked about continuity, and so many teams try to do two timelines, and it's hard to do because they try so hard and lean so hard into it, where the Suns have naturally done it. Their oldest guys are born in 1996. 4 guys will be 30 at a point this season, and Dylan Brooks will be 31 toward the end of the season. But that's your elder statesmen in the locker room, guys who have a lot of years left ahead of them. And then behind them are guys who can follow in their footsteps and learn a lot from them. They're guys who can learn from Dylan, guys who can learn from Book. Everybody can learn from Book. Guys who can learn from Luke Kennard and Haywood Highsmith as well. And those guys are in their early 20s. There's 2 teenagers on this roster as well. So that's what's really exciting. I'm excited that we'll be hearing from some of these guys before they go to Vegas, and then we will see them on the court next Friday. Steven, you got any final thoughts as we kind of round out here and think about everything that's transpired throughout today?
Yeah, the energy is very different. We go from last season, a bunch of gray area ambiguity, some unsurety, just really not knowing what things look like and what the capability of the decision-making faction of the Suns actually was, because that was just their first chance, and their first chance was one of the toughest, most important chances in recent Suns history. And it's felt like they've moved with great precaution, but also moved with great execution of whatever their plans have been with every step of the way. They've been 10 toes down as a group in terms of what the vision is and how to go about executing that. And we've seen them do a very solid job of, again, step by step, making things happen, one piece at a time. From the trades of Kevin Durant to obviously the situation with Bradley Beal, the recoup in terms of picks and players that they brought in response to that last season, and every decision they've made from there. I think the fun that fans are having from the decisions that group is making is that there's a clear plan that they're working off of, and it's not necessarily predictable, but you can trust that what's on the other side of that decision is something that's going to put the team in position to be equally as successful and have a chance to be more successful than they were last season. And it just comes down to what the team's execution is. But it doesn't feel like the team is going to be held back by the decisions being made from their higher-ups. And that's what full-on alignment looks like.
Ding.
Ding. Eric, your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are that I like this signing a lot. I think that on the court, there are a lot of fits for Luke Kennard. There are a lot of lineups that he can go into, whether you want to lean ultra offensive or if you just need an offensive outlet for a complete defensive lineup. He's there. He's a veteran. He's been around the block. And I believe that he has something to prove. Like Gil said as well earlier in this episode, great value, great signing, not going to change the world, not going to save the Suns, but it does help. If you look at that Miles Bridges trade as a 2-for-2 trade, since it allowed you to open up, you trade Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal for Miles Bridges and Luke Kennard. I believe that that's a good swap. So if those guys stay healthy and play, that's a good swap. The pick is a completely different conversation, but that's what it took to get it done, and you got it done. The Suns should be a better team next year. How much better is still yet to be determined, but on the court, it is very exciting what they've done over the last 10 days.
My final – go ahead.
There's going to be a lot more dunks this season.
Yes. Luke Kennard can get up.
He's got hops.
You were talking about All-Star Weekend. Luke Kennard, Colin Gillespie, the
all right, Eric.
They're going to be busy in the dunk contest.
All right, Eric.
I'm just saying. Luke Kennard, first time All-Star, also in the dunk contest. They say All-Stars don't do the dunk contest no more. Luke Kennard's changing that.
I can't wait to put together a Luke Kennard dunk reel for y'all.
Steve Nash could be participating with the skills challenge, the way they got it set up now with a
Who knows how they're gonna set it up next year? It could be something different. They might have podcasters in it next year. We could be in it next year. You don't know. I'm taking Team PHNX though.
Guess who's gonna be ready?
You know it. Come on now.
If it's a Phoenix Media All-Star Skills competition, that's not even gonna be close. And I want Shane Young to clip this. I want Shane Young to clip this.
Yeah. There you go. Well, speaking of my final thoughts, I will say that winning helps. It cures a lot. And Steven, you talked about what this team has come back from. And there are probably a lot of people, everybody coming into last year saying this team is going to win around 30 games, exceeding expectations and getting to 45 wins, making the playoffs, even if you didn't win a game or not. The experience that the young guys got from that and the reputation that you brought back to this franchise and what it brings and what it means to play Phoenix Suns basketball means you're an attractive free agent for guys like Luke Kennard, again, who was on a 50-win team last year. They have changes going on, and he decided that coming down here was a better situation for him and his career moving forward. And that all goes back to what this team did, the buy-in they had in their first-year head coach and what they were able to achieve. And that is nothing but exciting for what is to come forward. Speaking of what is to come forward, we are back here talking more about Luke Kennard and everything else in free agency tomorrow. Normal time, 3 p.m. We started early today for the beginning of free agency, but we're back at 3 p.m. our time, 6 on the East Coast, because we appreciate everybody out there, and 5 Central Time, because then we got some people out in the Central Time zone.
Shout out all the time zones.
Shout out to all the time zones. Just want to make sure you know when to catch us, and when you know where to follow us, you can follow Steven at StevenPG3, and that's Steven with a PH. You can follow Eric at ERIKRUBY. You can follow the Freckled Mamba at Freckled Mamba, who we appreciate for helping us get all of this together. You can follow me at Gil McGregor _, and you can listen to whatever point Eric has to make right now.
Not a point, but shout out Aiden, member for 6 months with a super chat at the buzzer here. Says, hello, Luke Kennard, who is in the chat, and it's definitely the real Luke Kennard, just like we've had the real Bismack Biombo and come on Malawatch as well. Shout out to you guys for your coverage.
Hey, and Brian McKnight. Hey, don't forget about Brian McKnight. Brian McKnight was in the chat all season.
Brian McKnight has been in the chat for sure. Who else has been? I think Book has been in the chat.
We have the real Eric Ruby, not the fake one, has been in the chat too.
Real and fake Eric Ruby in the chat. Haven't seen fake Eric Ruby in a minute though. He's scared.
Yeah, Matt Isbia in the chat a handful of times.
Yeah.
Shout out Matt Isbia. We had the Suns coach from the season before last in the chat quite often as well.
Oh, we had his clipboard. We had Mike Budenholzer's clipboard in the chat all the time.
Yeah, Clippy in the chat too, for sure.
Also, by the way, we've also had Ryan Dunn in studio. No big deal. So you can go watch that too if you're new around here.
Of course.
But yeah, shout out to you, Aiden, for being a member for 6 months and always being in here as well. That's my final point, Gil.
There you said, Aiden at the buzzer, much like Luke Kennard when he comes up in the clutch. And on that note, I will tell you guys to follow us at PHNX_Suns. I will thank you for hanging out with us here on this Tuesday evening, and I will bid you farewell. We will catch you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.